back. Now, if you think of a job, and this is what you imagine behind me, it's pretty obvious a gender trap that happens, well, the world over. My next guest is an award-winning engineer, though, trying to combat that. She's written a series of children's books. My mummy is a scientist, my mummy is a plumber, my mummy is an engineer. She's hoping to encourage more girls to think of careers in science, technology, engineering and maths. Corinne Bryan is there in our New York studios, and here with me in the studios is Charlie Young, co-founder of the Girls Network. So thanks both of you for being here with me. Corinne, to you first of all, tell me a little more about why you decided to write these books.
So I've worked as an electrical engineer for 15 years and I've thoroughly enjoyed my job. And it wasn't until I was 17 that I actually knew what engineering was about. And I wouldn't like for youngsters to miss out on such a rewarding career just because they didn't know what it was about. And I guess that was how the book started, with me also going into schools, volunteering and speaking to children, and realising that there were lots of misconceptions about what engineering entailed, as well as lots of girls not knowing that it was an option for them to go into.
When you started as an engineer, did you see many people, any people, that actually looked like you?
I wouldn't say not many people that looked like me. There were a few, maybe one or two women, but not many.
Charlie, let me bring you in because your organisation helps with support for girls and women trying to break into all of these industries. I'll get to that in a moment, but what do you think are the biggest barriers?
I think it's really important to be able to see people you can relate to doing the jobs and having the futures that you might aspire to. And I think for girls in particular, it's often quite difficult to see women or people that look like them that they can relate to in careers, particularly those of influence and power, so STEM, politics, journalism in some respects as well.
You talk about the 5 C's. Just explain to our viewers, what exactly do you mean by that?
Yes, so we talk about the 5 C's as a way of encapsulating some of the careers that are typically female-dominated and women are typically drawn to. So they are cleaning, catering, caring, cashiering and clerking. So they're the sort of caring service jobs, but they're often less well paid and lower status. Not to make them any less important, but where that's all you expect you might do, that can be quite limiting.
Let's go back to New York and Corinne. It's interesting because you talk about going to schools. I know you do that a lot and talking to the girls. Tell me a little more about what girls say to you and why you decided, in terms of these books, I mean they're fascinating. They rhyme, they're illustrated, but they're clearly aimed at a very, very young children.
Yeah, so I was spending time going to colleges and secondary schools, and I noticed that by the time, at the age of the children that I was speaking to, they'd already made their decisions on the career options that they wanted to go into, and lots of misconceptions about what engineering involved had already formed by then. So there was a lot of unconscious bias, and I realised that this started from a really young age, so I wanted to try and capture it at that age. Although there's lots of work to be done at the different levels, that was my aim.
I love the repetition in the books. It's a classic tactic in a children's book and so effective. You said it twice about misconceptions. What sort of misconceptions are there? What do girls think engineering is? Why do they think it is not something that they could possibly do?
So if you do an internet search of an engineer, it comes up with a white man in a hard hat. That's the image that's mainly there. And that's the kind of image that people, I think, are put off by. And really, engineering covers lots of areas. So you can be office-based, you can be based in the field working on site. My job is 90% in the office. So I think it's just them kinds of images of it being a construction and a dirty, hands-on kind of job, which it really isn't about.
Charlie, let me bring you back in because I said earlier that you offer sort of help and support. I mean, practically how? How do you break through all of the things we've been talking about?
Of course. So we work with 14 to 19-year-old girls, so a little bit older, but for many of them, they've suffered from those preconceptions, and we match them one-to-one with professional women across careers as mentors. And the idea is about building up skills and confidence, but also opening up networks and opportunities they otherwise wouldn't have access to, and exposing them to a whole range of different careers and opportunities for their futures.
It's interesting because before they got married, Meghan Markle was in Birmingham doing exactly this, supporting groups that are pushing girls into STEM subjects. There she is with Prince Harry. But it's interesting, when you look at the stats, you know, only a quarter of the UK's science, technology, engineering and maths workforce are women. I mean, we're such a way to go in terms of 50-50.
Absolutely. And you know, we say you can't be what you can't see. There's a real barrier. If girls are looking to these careers and not seeing people like them doing it, then they're going to assume, well, maybe I should be doing something else. And we really find with the girls we work with that that can be a big barrier. But having in-depth conversations with professionals and relating to them, and actually spending time in the workplace as well and feeling like this is somewhere I can be, I belong here, has a real impact in terms of what they think about what they can do in their futures.
Let's go back to Karine in New York, because how quickly or slowly do you think things are changing? Because when I think of this sort of area, I think of science and, say, space and astronauts and space travel. And you see people like Helen Sharman there in space, and many, many other women that have followed that journey. You think about astronomy and women in science. Are things not improving?
Things are improving, but it's very slow, and it's going to take a long time for there to be a substantial change. In order to improve the economy, there's lots of technological changes that are happening, and we need engineers to fill the gaps. There's a huge skills gap. So we're missing out on 50% of the population there, and we need to really improve the rate at which the change is happening.
So you're talking to girls in schools and younger with these books, but how much of the conversation should also be the schools themselves, the teaching staff, that area to sort of broaden it out and say, look, this is something you could actually consider or do?
I think there needs to be maybe a link between industry and schools to make sure that you just discussed about children seeing people who look like them. So if there can be a link there, then that could improve things.
Charlie, just a final word, because I've got 3 daughters,
yes.
and you just hear it all the time. Maths, it's not for me. I mean, why do you think that is so ingrained so early?
I think there is definitely a view that maths is for boys, that kind of technical stuff is for boys, and I think Karine's absolutely right, that, and your point too, that teachers also need to be thinking about the way they are praising boys and girls and the kind of implicit messages they're giving to students. I think also parents as well maybe have accepted that, oh, I'm not very good at maths is okay to say. So I think it's a really complex problem, and I think there are solutions all the way through the chain with young children, with secondary school age children, with teachers, with parents, and also with wider society and the media.
Well, listen, we have run out of time, but it's been fascinating talking to both of you. So thank you so much, both of you, for your time and going through all those issues. Thanks so much for your time.